Right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax referral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. Using a proven tax referral strategy such as the deferred sales trust is an amazing way for you to create and preserve more wealth when exiting highly appreciated assets. Not using a 1031 exchange, so you can create and preserve more wealth, or help your clients, friends, and family do the same. We're also streaming on expert CRE secrets as well. So all those commercial real estate entrepreneurs and real estate investors, thank you so much for watching us on YouTube or hearing us on the podcast. My name is Brett Swartz, and I'm the founder of Capital Gains Tax Solutions. I'm also a multifamily investor, as well broker, and we're here each episode to bring you some of the best real estate, financial, wealth, and business minds in the world, where they share their ideas, deal stories, and inspiration. So together we can make complex tax referral strategies simple and passive income plans achievable. I'm excited about our next guest. He is out of Nevada, the very, very tax-friendly state of Nevada. He's the co-founder and managing partner of the Baring Group, specializing in multifamily real estate investment and best-in-class asset management. He's a 25-year veteran of the U.S. military and federal law enforcement. Please welcome to the show with me, Branton Blunt. Branton, how you doing?
Good. How you doing, Brett?
I am great. For our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us a little bit about your story and your current focus?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. I've been in the federal law enforcement community, was my background, and the military since age 19. Joined up in 1999 while I was in college. And timing is everything in life, as they say. 6 months after I graduated boot camp, 9/11 occurred, which very much changed the dynamic of the next decade of my life. And spent a lot of time bouncing around the world with the Army. I was enlisted in the Army for 19 years, and started off as a military policeman, and then spent 11 years as a criminal investigator, special agent in the Army. Did various roles, criminal investigations, executive protection, and things like that. And then received a direct commission into the Navy as a reservist, as an intelligence officer. So I'm still in and getting ready to retire. So that's my background in federal law enforcement and the intelligence community. And about 5-6 years ago, started in multifamily. Started off as just an interest to kind of exercise the entrepreneurial side of my brain, which, gosh knows, the military and the federal government does not. And really enjoyed the team building, the logistics, which I brought from my professional career, and to learn the business and apply it and overlay it to the multifamily syndication world.
Amazing. Branton Blunt, first of all, I want to thank you for your service. Thank you for serving the country. And we
Appreciate
actually
it.
met at the conference in Las Vegas, Multifamily Investing Conference, which was a great conference. And you shared some really cool stories. We'll maybe touch on one here in a minute. But before we go there, and before we dive into the topic at hand, which is scaling a multifamily investing operation, I do want to take one other step back. I believe we've all been given certain gifts in this life, and these gifts have been given to us to be a blessing and help to others. So I'm curious, what are the one or two strengths or gifts that you believe you were given, and how does it help how you help and bless people today?
Absolutely. I think I came up in a very strong kind of large family setting, East Coast originally, tri-state New Jersey area, and learned from an early age the power of being genuine and building relationships and following through on the things you say and do. And I've brought that to my professional career throughout federal law enforcement, throughout the military, gaining buy-in from key stakeholders around you, friends, family, business partners, and then demonstrating loyalty and integrity to those people without question.
Fantastic. Absolutely love it. So the power of being genuine in everything you do and being loyal and committed, which goes perfect for all of your service. And now you're transitioning as an entrepreneur into the multifamily operations space, which is so great because you have all of that logistics background, the operational background, and probably the intense pressure background. So I'm curious, what is the one story that you feel like you can tell, right? That kind of encompasses perhaps your profession, serving the country or serving in law enforcement?
Absolutely. I think something that parallels it, it's not the sexiest of war stories possibly, but I think it's most applicable here, which is I spent years in executive protection, which most people associate with like the Secret Service work. As an active duty criminal investigator with the Army, I was assigned to the protection detail and lead protection detail for the Secretary of Defense, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. And we were on the road, 200 to 300 days a year. And our job was to provide security protocols so that the senior DoD officials could conduct their mission and do their job regardless of environment. And what you learn is that you don't get to pick and choose your environment. You don't get to pick and choose when you're there. You don't get to pick and choose necessarily the tools or resources that you have at your disposal. Those things are handed to you, and you're told to accomplish the mission accordingly, whether it's an austere environment or short time frame or little lead time. You don't have a lot of planning time. So operating under those conditions is something that I think is drilled into you in that line of work. And there is no sitting on the sideline and waiting for the right time, which I hear a lot in real estate. So, and that, I think that ties directly into your ability to demonstrate good judgment in the assessment of risk, the mitigation of risk, and then understanding the final component, which is reaching a level where you're able to tolerate the remaining risk, which is not spoken about all that often, but it is core both in that line of work and that. So understanding that no matter how good your plan is, if the environment throws something at you, you have to be able to adapt and overcome and still get the job done. And I think that we had those situations time and time again, especially through the 2000s, where we were traveling back and forth between Middle East environments, North African environments, and with a lot of ambiguity in what we would get when we landed, so to speak. So applying that to the real estate world has been a really, I think, a key metric to our success in just really adapting to whatever the current environment is, and then bringing in the right pieces to get the job done.
Amazing. Absolutely love that. That's just makes so much sense. It's like you've been practicing and performing at the pro level, and now you've got an opportunity to do some multifamily operational investing. So, what's some vacancy, or what's some increased cost in insurance, or labor, or these rent control laws, or all these different things that are in place when you're helping to protect some of the senior officials in the U.S. government. So that being said, let's dive right into that, right? Mr. Branson Blunt, by the way, the Baring Group is, and you can find him on LinkedIn. You look up the Baring Group at Branson Blunt, spelled Branton for Branton. So Branton, what's the number one secret to scaling a multifamily investing operation?
Boy, that answer probably changes as you get into the business and learn and get more experience, both good and bad, right? I think you learn more from bad experiences and bad leadership around you in life than, you don't learn a lot from things that go great or things that go well. You just kind of chalk it up to, I did everything right, and you move on. Whereas when things go somewhat wrong or start to derail, it forces you to do some critical thinking. So I think one of the number one secrets in getting started and scaling in multifamily past the initial education in the business or any new field that you're going into is understanding that it is a team sport. There is going to be a time later on in your career where you will need to maybe shrink the size of your teams somewhat as you have more resources internally to apply to acquisitions and life cycle and business plan implementation. But getting started definitely means teaming up with others, because there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle required to source, successfully conduct due diligence, gain the debt service needed, the equity raise, and ultimately close on the property, and then effectively implement your business plan over the next 3, 5, 7 years to execute on the underwriting projections that you are offering your equity partners. So that is a team sport. And not everybody's going to just start off with this big, giant, vertically integrated company. You have to leverage the skills of others to get that done. And so
Absolutely.
that is the big secret.
Excellent. So the number one secret is understanding it's a team sport, and understanding that it's going to take someone who's going to be sourcing, due diligence, debt and equity raise, close, and or a mixture of some of those roles. So what's the number one secret to making sure you're finding the proper team member, perhaps, to make sure you're hitting number one secret on a successful start?
Absolutely. I think first understanding the pieces of the puzzle, right? If you're going to acquire a property based off size, price, you can then back into how much the loan proceeds are going to be, and you're going to have to satisfy net worth and liquidity requirements for those loans. You're going to have if it's a value add or construction capex type, who's going to project manage, who has those expertise, who has that background, who can raise the necessary equity capital into the deal to satisfy that piece of the puzzle. And then who's going to asset manage, conduct financial modeling, investor updates, quarterly, monthly, all of those things. So understanding the pieces of the puzzle is step one. And then see a gap, fill a gap, right? That's been always been my mantra. So you have to step in and fill those roles and make sure that you have adequate personnel. This is not something where you really want to have an entire team of people that are at the same knowledge level as you. While that is generally where we gravitate, or we gravitate from human nature, everybody wants to be the smartest guy in the room or smartest guy on the team. That is not the successful team to really for anything, but let alone multifamily acquisitions. So you really need to put people that are smarter than you in a functional area that have a background in that area, because they're going to do it better than you, most likely. So I think that's a key element to that.
Excellent. I love that. See a gap, fill a gap. Make sure you have adequate personnel, and understand that having people smarter than you in the room are going to help you to and fill that gap is going to be the key there. And then you mentioned a key thing too, like the net worth requirements. You're basically starting with the end in mind and reverse engineering it. Like, we're going to need somebody who has a net worth who can sign on this loan, and it's maybe call it like a key person, right? Who just
Yeah,
their
key
net worth
principal,
alone.
KP.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Key person there to the KP to make sure that you can actually even get the loan, right? And then that's part of the
Right.
GP capital stack, right? And then you're going to have the LP capital stack, and breaking up and filtering all that out, which leads into question number two. What's the number two secret to scaling a multifamily investing operation?
Once you have that team in place, and it doesn't necessarily need to be you don't it doesn't necessarily need to be a team that you design in advance and you all partner up and you go create an LLC together, because keep in mind you still have to adapt to specific deals and specific environments. So if I currently own in Texas but I want to go buy in Kansas City or wherever, um, there's a good chance that I'm going to need somebody that's already in that market to satisfy other requirements. Equity partners, lenders, they may say, are you currently operating in this market? Well, you want to make sure you have someone on the team that is. So you may have to plug and play and have people at your disposal that you've built rapport with, that you have good working relationships with, so that they are a tool in your toolbox as you are to them when the right deal comes up and it's the right fit. Do I need the same people for a deal where I already own 500 doors? Probably not. I can satisfy more of those requirements on my own in that market. But if I extend to a new market, there's going to be different requirements. Thus, the shape and personnel on the team may look a little different. So I think having your core team that you trust, that you trust them with your bank accounts, you trust them across the board, and then you kind of build out layers of the onion from there.
Yeah, it makes a whole lot of sense, right? You're not necessarily just pigeonholing in where you're going to grow, and having the key personality to sign up for a loan is one role, but another one is the boots on the ground, who know the market, who are intimate with the market, who can get to a property quickly, right? Who develop maybe broker relationships or even direct to owner relationships, and are just in a different state, right? Because guess what? It's the multifamily game is it's not necessarily just in the state that you're in, right? And so being able to have, I guess, in that scenario, like almost like subdivisions, right, or franchisees at a local state to be that person for that. And it may or may not mean the other partners are necessarily a part of that particular deal, depending on what they bring to the table. Is that a fair summary, Brandon?
Absolutely. You want to leverage the skill sets as needed, deal by deal. And it doesn't mean that you're a solopreneur with no teammates, but it's a balance. Maybe you have two or three people, because I see a lot of people jump into this business. So and so, Joe, Bob, and Frank and I are going to go rock the multifamily world, right? And we create an LLC and we create email addresses and we get a domain and we pay for a website and we do all these things. before there's ever even a deal, and thus the requirements of getting that deal done haven't even been presented yet, right? So I'm not saying don't have your one or two go-to team members. I do as well. But then we stop there, and then we look at the requirements of the mission, right? The property, and say who's the best fit for this deal at this time in this market, and we go from
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. I love that you say the requirements of the mission, right? So if you take your approach with the operations and in your military background, it's like the mission is the most important thing. And then the key is, accomplishing the mission. And then and B, finding the right people to do it. It doesn't mean that the people, are necessarily going to be for that mission. And so
Absolutely.
that is key. So great. Let's maybe secret number 3. We've already kind of secret number 1 is making sure that you take a team mindset. You're building a team, right? Number 2, that you're making sure that when you're not pushing it too fast, too far, that you don't have flexibility within the team, perhaps. And then what would you say number 3 is?
I think it's execution time, right? So that's where you want people that you've designed a plan, but you can also get stuck in a planning phase perpetually. Whether you call it paralysis by analysis, which you hear a lot, or you will not learn, you will not advance until you go and execute. And so that's where I mentioned earlier, mitigating. You cannot mitigate risk to zero. It will never occur. There's always risk, but mitigating it to a level, and then demonstrating good judgment in that, okay, the remaining risk we can now tolerate and execute and overcome. We're comfortable with it at this point. So I think that is one, being prepared to pull the trigger. And this is the definition of judgment, right? Not too early and not too late. That comes down to personal judgment. But also, I think formalizing. A lot of people leave their W-2 jobs, wherever it may be. They want to flee from the constraints of policies and regulations and checklists and tracking mechanisms, and they see the grass is greener in the entrepreneurial world. I'm going to work for myself. I'm going to build this business. I'm not going to have any of those burdensome rules and regulations that I'm sick of. And then you realize that with no structure, your business is doomed, or it will do well for a while, and I think then you lack the ability to scale, because you can't bring on a virtual assistant any more than an employee or a partner if you can't teach them the job, if there's no standard operating procedure on how to do the job, or how you want the job done, even if they have a background in it. So I do think what I have seen most people get a couple hundred doors, and then they start to really try to stay afloat. And it's because they lack a real formalized system for tracking the metrics of what they're trying to achieve. So using a project management software, there's a lot of them out there, Monday, Podio, where you now implement your template for the process for your acquisition, and you can assign it to people, you can track it. And I get it, this all starts to sound scary, like the job everyone wanted to get away from. But when you start to have multiple projects all at different stages involving construction, acquisitions, equity raise, legal, insurance, all these things, you need a forum where you can accurately track and hold people accountable, and thus keep that project moving forward. Otherwise, you get too disorganized, and your Google Drive or your Dropbox turns into just a trough of information that's just flowing at 1,000 miles an hour, and there's really no one at the helm of the ship.
So much wisdom there. Branson Blunt, we're talking about the Baron Group, scaling a multifamily investing operation. And yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Execution, you got to take action, and you're going to learn through the action, and learn through riding the bike, learn through jumping in the pool and swimming and getting out there. And you can't mitigate your risk to zero, everybody. You got to take action, figure out what you can tolerate for the risk, and then take action. And then also realize that you're going to have to put some structure in place for those that want to just be entrepreneur. Make sure that you're putting that structure in place. Yeah, Monday.com. That's a good one. Project management software. Branton, we're ready to shift over to some capital gains tax and geek out a little bit here.
Let's do it. You
All
teach
right.
me.
Yeah. And so I'm curious on what would you feel like the biggest frustration when it comes to the 1031 exchange, or lack thereof options for business or people that are exiting that you've worked with over the years?
Yeah, we've we've brought 1031 investors into our deals and through a tick structure. It tends to common, and it is a learning curve. I think the biggest pain point is the timelines. All the stars have to align to get a multifamily deal, LOI, purchase and sale agreement, due diligence, time to close, potential extension. So let's just call that, a 30 conventional. So 30 days due diligence, 30 days to close, a potential 30-day option extension. So 90 days, give or take, until you have to go begging for some sort of extension from the seller, and they'll hold you over the barrel and make you pay a bunch of money. So you don't want to put yourself in that position. So you basically have a 90-day window. The 1031 exchange is limiting. Correct me. It's 45 days to identify. Once you're in the exchange with an intermediary, you have to identify your potential property investments within 45 days, and then place that capital within 180. The identification list is a tough one. I have 90 days, but really 30 to 45 days where I need to identify where my equity sources or the bulk of it's coming from, so that I can have confidence to close. And you're talking about the exact same timeline for a 1031. So you basically need a 1031 exchange person to be going into an exchange the day you go under contract, give or take. That's tough. That is tough to do. And you have to have a big network, or you have to work with a lot of intermediaries. So there's other avenues that you specialize in that affords people the opportunity to have a little bit more flexible timeline to make sure that their funds end up in the investment that suits them.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed it. We call it the shotgun wedding, right? It's like we all know the people who got married really fast, right? And it may or may not work out.
Well, come on down to Vegas where I live. We're filled with that.
Exactly, right. So it's part of it, but sometimes it does work out, and it's fine. That's great. If you can find a great 1031, hey, we're the happiest for you. We love 1031 exchanges when we love the deal, but we hate 1031 exchanges when we don't love the deal, right? And that's the key. Right. Do you love that deal? Would you have bought it if it weren't for your 1031? Are you letting the tax tail wag the investment dog? Otherwise, do you want to escape the 1031 forever and go to capitalgainstaxsearch.com and use what's called a deferred sales trust? By the way, it works for businesses, primary homes, crypto, stock. So whereas the 1031 only works for investment real estate, it also works great for partnering up with people like a Branson Blunt, who's investing into value-add multifamily properties, because once the funds are in the trust, they can come in as a passive investor without having to carve out anything and make it complicated to accept the capital on Branson's perspective. So it gives you a chance to diversify within even the investment real estate world versus all of your eggs in one property going to typically one other property that's just a little bit bigger, even potentially more debt. And so go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to escape the 1031 forever. That's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. That being said, Branson, are you ready for the lightning round?
Let's do it.
All right. Knowing what you know now, if you could go back to your 25-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget make sure to tell yourself to do?
Get started in real estate at 25. There's certain things you cannot speed up. We've discussed a lot of the different pieces of the puzzle, and I've told people that are getting started, you need to get your first 400 or 500 doors under your belt so that you can then make money on your second 400 or 500 doors, because you have to give away equity to solve for all those pieces. So it is a timeline that you truly cannot speed up in certain respects. You can do certain things that are catalysts, but you have to be in it and get started early, get into deals, work with good people, and get that clock ticking.
Excellent. What's the number one book you've recommended the most in the past year?
Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal. It is a phenomenal book about delegation, the creating of small teams and putting the right people in place, and then delegating decision authority down to those organic levels so that you can react more quickly to the operating environment.
Team of Teams. I'm getting it on Audible right now. Question number 3, what's your favorite leadership quote or theme that you strive to live by?
I like Robert Gates has a good one in his book, Passion for Leadership, former Secretary of Defense and Director of the CIA. He has one that talks about micro knowledge versus micromanagement. And I think that comes into play very much in real estate. You do not need to be the underwriter but you do need to understand underwriting and what goes into it. And especially as you build out your teams and start to delegate tasks to other people, you need to be able to have the self-confidence to relinquish that authority in your business to be effective and to scale. But you also need to understand what it looks like when it's being done right, and more importantly, what it looks like when it's being done wrong.
That's great wisdom. Love that. Question number, I think 4. What are you most curious about right now?
I'm interested to see what the multifamily realm brings us. There's a lot of talk about recession and debt crisis and things like that. I think there's a lot of deals that are going to be trading hands, but they aren't going to necessarily permeate up to the surface of being listed for sale. So that's going to be very fascinating. And in addition, I'm excited for the next chapter. I always like working with new people, bringing them into the business, and I love building teams. And no one team looks like the last, and that's the part that stays most interesting for me.
Fantastic. Last question, Branson. After all your success, helping all the people you help, serving our country, and having an amazing career there, what would you say is the number one thing that you practice to stay centered in your values and stay encouraged to charge forward to take new mountains?
Self-awareness. I think it's one of the key traits of leadership paired with empathy and taking that approach. But self-awareness allows you to think critically about in real time, what am I doing? How is it being received? And is it more about my own emotions, or is it more about the desired end state, which is getting the job done? And is the focus on the right thing? So I think self-awareness triggers a lot of other elements that get the job done.
Amazing. Branson Blunt, I want to thank you for being a part of the show, sharing us with tons of wisdom. I want to thank you for your service to the United States government, to the military, to the citizens of America by serving your country. And as well, I want to encourage you to keep using the power of being genuine in everything you do, and helping people to achieve multifamily or investing in passive income wealth, right? And freedoms that come through that. For those who want to get in touch with you, would you remind them one last time what's the best place for them to find you?
Absolutely. You can reach me on LinkedIn, Branton Blunt, Brant as in Tom, O-N, Blount. And through there, we can connect by email, connect by phone, and see where our paths may cross.
Fantastic. Thanks, Brent. And I also want to thank our listeners for listening to an episode of the Capital Gains Tax News Podcast, also streaming Expert CRE Secrets Podcast, where we believe most high net worth individuals and those who help them, they struggle with clarifying their capital gains tax referral options. Not having a clear plan is the enemy. Using a proven tax referral strategy and or getting with someone like Branson Blunt to invest with is an amazing way for you to create and preserve more wealth. If you want to build a capital gains tax exit plan, I encourage you to go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. It needs to be $1 million net proceeds. $1 million gain is the key. We also have a brand new book called Building a Capital Gains Tax Exit Plan. Hit #1 bestseller here in real estate and wealth recently. We're really proud of that. But you can pick up your copy on Amazon. It's about $15, worth every penny, right? Lots of smart people in the book, like Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank and other really smart people. So check out that book, and then go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com if you want to get started with your exit planning. Thanks so much for listening, and we promise to do better next time. Bye.